In a historic decision, the Supreme Court has struck down the legal authority that enabled former President Trump's sweeping trade wars. The ruling finds that Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act was unconstitutionally applied, curbing the president's power to impose tariffs unilaterally. Financial markets surged, and political leaders worldwide are scrambling to assess the implications. This isn't just about economics, it's a turning point for presidential power, American manufacturing, and the nation's global role. The decision closes a contentious chapter and forces a national reckoning on the future of U.S. trade policy. As the Biden administration and Congress prepare to unwind the tariffs, the country faces a new era in trade relations. To truly grasp the significance of today's Supreme Court ruling, we need to take a step back and examine the turbulent history that led us here. The story of the tariff wars is not just about economics, it's about politics, global power, and the everyday lives of millions of Americans. It all began with the rise of Donald Trump and his bold America First trade policy. Trump's message resonated with voters who felt left behind by globalization, promising to bring jobs back to American soil and restore the country's manufacturing might. In 2018, the Trump administration made a dramatic move. Tariffs became their weapon of choice. These taxes on imported goods were designed to shield U.S. industries from foreign competition and shrink the nation's growing trade deficit. The hope was to revive American factories and create new opportunities for workers. China quickly became the main target, accused of unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. But the tariffs didn't stop there. Even close allies like Canada and the European Union found themselves hit with steep duties on steel and aluminum, straining diplomatic ties and sparking outrage abroad. The administration justified these sweeping measures using Section 232, a law dating back to the Cold War era. Originally intended to protect the nation from genuine security threats, it was now being used to address economic competition, a controversial stretch of its original purpose. Critics argued that this blurred the line between national security and economic protectionism. The result was a wave of global retaliation, as other countries imposed their own tariffs on American goods. Supply chains were thrown into chaos, and uncertainty rippled through the global economy. In the short term, some U.S. industries, especially steel and aluminum, enjoyed a boost. Factories reopened and workers celebrated new jobs and investments. For these communities, the tariffs seemed like a lifeline. But the picture was far from rosy for everyone. Many manufacturers faced higher costs for imported materials, making it harder to compete. Farmers, caught in the crossfire of retaliatory tariffs, struggled to sell their crops overseas. Small businesses and consumers felt the pinch as prices rose and markets shrank. The tariff wars created clear winners and losers, igniting a fierce national debate. Did America First truly benefit the country, or did it deepen divisions and hurt more people than it helped? The answer has remained hotly contested, with passionate arguments on both sides. Now, with today's Supreme Court decision, that long-running debate reaches a dramatic turning point. The ruling will shape the future of U.S. trade policy, and its impact will be felt for years to come. The legal battle began in 2018, when steel importers challenged Trump's use of Section 232 as unconstitutional executive overreach. They argued the law gave the president unchecked power, violating the separation of powers. The case wound through the courts, with lower courts siding with the government based on old precedent. By the time the Supreme Court took up the case, the effects of the tariffs were clear, and the stakes had grown. During oral arguments, justices questioned whether steel from allies like Canada could truly threaten U.S. security. The stage was set for a constitutional showdown over the limits of presidential authority in trade. Today's ruling delivers a decisive answer. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that the executive's use of Section 232 was unconstitutional. The majority opinion by Chief Justice Roberts declared that national security cannot be a blank check for tariffs. The court didn't strike down the law itself, but sharply limited its use. Future tariffs must be tied to real security threats, not economic protectionism. Congress now regains primary authority over trade policy. The Biden administration has halted collection of the affected tariffs and is reviewing next steps. Dissenters warned the ruling could weaken the nation's ability to respond to threats, but the majority's decision now stands. The ruling reshapes U.S. economic and foreign policy overnight. Markets soared on news of the ruling, with manufacturing stocks up and steel producers down. Companies are rapidly recalibrating supply chains, anticipating lower costs and more predictable trade. For consumers, economists predict lower prices on goods from cars to electronics, easing inflation. The end of tariffs could put hundreds of dollars back in the average household's pocket. However, protected industries and unions worry about renewed foreign competition and job losses. The government faces complex legal questions about refunding billions in tariff revenue. Lawsuits from importers are likely, adding to the challenge of unwinding years of trade policy. The Biden administration must now balance competing interests as it manages this historic transition. The political fallout is immediate and far-reaching. As the news breaks, the atmosphere in Washington is electric. Reporters scramble for statements, and politicians are caught off guard in the corridors of power. The ruling sends shockwaves through both parties, upending months of careful strategy and igniting a new wave of uncertainty across the nation. For President Biden, the ruling presents a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's an unexpected opportunity to reset America's trade policy, potentially appealing to voters who want change. On the other, it's a daunting challenge, especially in key swing states where economic anxieties run high. Biden and his advisors huddle in the Oval Office, weighing how to address the concerns of workers, farmers, and business owners who are watching closely. Every word, every policy tweak could tip the balance in states that will decide the next election. The 2028 presidential race is now dominated by the issue of trade. Candidates from both parties are forced to rethink their platforms, scrambling to respond to the new reality. At rallies and debates, trade policy becomes the central topic, with voters demanding clear answers. The stakes are higher than ever, and every candidate knows that their stance on trade could make or break their campaign. Former President Trump and other protectionist voices are quick to decry the decision, calling it a betrayal of American workers and industries. Their outrage is echoed by protesters outside the Capitol and by fiery speeches on the House floor. Meanwhile, Congress braces for a fierce new battle over who should control tariff authority, with both sides digging in for a prolonged fight. Lawmakers from both parties rush to draft new proposals. Some push for limiting the president's power over trade, arguing for more checks and balance. Others advocate for greater congressional oversight, insisting that trade policy should reflect the will of the people. Behind closed doors, bipartisan meetings become more frequent as leaders search for common ground, or at least a way forward. The ruling has the potential to realign party identities in unexpected ways. Free trade Republicans and moderate Democrats, once divided by party lines, now find themselves working together. New alliances begin to form as lawmakers realize that the old rules no longer apply. The political landscape is shifting, and no one is quite sure where it will settle. The debate over America's trade future has shifted dramatically. From the executive branch to the halls of Congress, lawmakers take center stage, holding hearings and engaging in passionate debates that will shape the nation's economic direction for years to come. The world watches as America redefines its role in the global marketplace. Now, the nation's approach to global commerce is truly up for grabs. Every decision made in Washington will ripple across international markets, affecting jobs, prices, and America's standing on the world stage. The stakes have never been higher, and the outcome remains uncertain. America's allies welcome the decision, seeing it as a return to predictable, rules-based trade. The EU, Canada, and Japan praise the move, eager to rebuild economic partnerships. China's response was cautious. While some tariffs will end, broader US-China tensions remain. The ruling is a win for the World Trade Organization, reinforcing the value of multilateral systems. Developing nations hope for more stable trade and investment. The world now watches to see if the US will lead a new era of cooperation, or if new forms of protectionism will emerge. The Supreme Court's decision signals a recommitment to global norms. The next steps will shape the future of international trade. Experts across the political and economic spectrum agree. The Supreme Court's landmark decision marks the definitive end of a costly and controversial economic experiment that has shaped U.S. trade policy for years. This ruling is not just a legal milestone, but a turning point in how America approaches its role in the global economy. Multiple studies and economic analyses have shown that the tariffs imposed during the Trump administration failed to achieve their intended goals. Despite promises to reduce the U.S. trade deficit and revive domestic manufacturing, the numbers tell a different story. The trade deficit remained stubbornly high, and the anticipated manufacturing renaissance never materialized. Instead, many factories struggled to stay open, and some were forced to close, leaving workers and communities in limbo. While a handful of protected industries saw short-term gains, these were quickly offset by losses in other sectors. The tariffs didn't eliminate imports, they simply shifted them to other countries, creating a game of economic whack-a-mole. American businesses faced higher costs, and global supply chains were disrupted, making it harder for U.S. companies to compete. The fallout was especially severe for American agriculture. Retaliatory tariffs from trading partners devastated farmers, slashing exports and driving down prices. The government was forced to step in with multi-billion-dollar bailouts, but for many rural communities, the damage was already done. In the end, the economic distortions caused by these policies far outweighed any perceived benefits. Businesses faced uncertainty, costs rose for consumers, and the risks of acting unilaterally became painfully clear. The experiment highlighted the dangers of protectionism when not carefully considered. The Supreme Court's ruling is widely seen as a necessary course correction, pulling the United States back from the brink of a full-scale global trade war. It sends a strong message to the world that America is committed to fair and stable trade relationships, and that it values cooperation over confrontation. This decision reaffirms that trade policy must be deliberate, transparent, and guided by long-term national interests, not driven by the whims of any single administration. It restores the balance of power between Congress and the executive branch, ensuring that major economic decisions are made with broad consensus. With this ruling, the era of using national security as a broad pretext for imposing sweeping tariffs is over. The United States now faces a new chapter, one where trade policy is shaped by careful analysis, open debate, and a renewed commitment to global leadership. The Supreme Court's ruling closes a turbulent chapter and opens a new one for U.S. trade. Congress and the administration must now unwind tariffs, address legal claims, and support affected industries. The decision is a call for bipartisan policymaking and a smarter fair trade strategy. America has a chance to lead by building bridges, not walls, and by upholding the rule of law. The challenge is to ensure the benefits of trade are widely shared, while protecting workers and consumers. The world is watching as the U.S. redefines its economic role. The work of building a more prosperous future begins now.